ever feel like the ground is constantly shifting under your feet?
Especially when you're trying to get a project off the ground.
It's like, trying to build on one of those bouncy castles.
The ones kids love.
And listen, trying to keep up with all the external factors that can impact a project, it's enough to make anyone's head spin.
It really is.
But don't worry, because in this deep dive, we're going to give you the, tools and insights you need to navigate those choppy waters.
Like a pro.
Exactly, like a pro. We're talking about those sneaky external factors that can make or break a project. Things like a sudden shift in regulations or unexpected technological advancements.
Don't forget global events.
Oh, yeah, those too.
The ones that feel a world away.
Right, but can, directly impact your bottom line.
It's all connected.
It really is. And we're going to unpack exactly how. What's really cool is we've got our hands on this super practical guide designed specifically for project managers.
Oh, it's nice.
Think of it as our treasure map for this deep dive. It breaks down these external factors into 4 main categories and then dives into, you guessed it, the impact.
The impact those factors can have on your projects.
Yes. And most importantly, what you can do about it.
Love that.
Are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it. You know what's fascinating to me?
What's that?
How often these external factors catch people off guard. We get so laser focused on our to-do lists and deadlines
Right.
that we forget to look up and see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's like trying to build a house on the beach without considering the tide, right?
Totally. And our guide actually breaks down these external factors into 4 main categories: regulations, technology,
Geopolitics.
geopolitics, always a fun one, and last but definitely not least,
Good old market conditions.
yes. Let's break down each of these a little further,
Okay.
shall we?
Absolutely. So let's start with regulations. Think about how often laws and guidelines change, even within a specific industry. One day you're in the clear, the next you're scrambling to adapt.
It's true. It's like trying to hit a moving target sometimes. And I imagine this is especially tricky for industries like, say, healthcare or finance, where regulations are constantly evolving.
Precisely. And then you've got technology,
Oh, technology.
which is like this double-edged sword.
Okay.
On one hand, it's constantly creating new possibilities.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's also making things obsolete at an alarming rate.
It's true. Today's shiny new tech solution could be tomorrow's outdated relic.
Exactly.
And I bet this is a major headache for anyone working on long-term projects.
Absolutely. Now, let's not forget about geopolitics.
Oh, right, geopolitics, yeah.
This one might seem a bit distant from your day-to-day,
Yeah.
but trust me, it can have a ripple effect on even the most local projects.
Okay, give me an example. How can something happening on the other side of the world directly impact my project?
Well, imagine you're working on a construction project, right? Everything's going smoothly. You've sourced your materials, and then bam, a trade dispute erupts
Oh, no.
between 2 countries that are major suppliers of, let's say, steel.
Okay.
Suddenly, your material costs skyrocket, throwing your budget and timeline into disarray.
Oof. Yeah. I can see that snowballing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that we're all more interconnected than we sometimes realize. Okay, so we've got regulations, technology, geopolitics. What was the last one again?
Market conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let the name fool you. This one's all about understanding the ever-changing landscape of supply and demand, competition, and even consumer behavior.
Right. So it's not enough to just know what you're selling. You have to be aware of what else is out there, how much people are willing to pay, and what the overall economic climate looks like.
Exactly. And this is where a lot of businesses, especially startups, can get tripped up.
Yeah.
They might have a fantastic product,
Right.
but they launch it at the wrong time or fail to adapt to shifting consumer preferences.
Yeah. You're in for a tough ride. It's like trying to sell ice cream in the middle of winter.
Exactly.
Bad timing can make all the difference. Okay, so we've covered the 4 main external factors that can impact a project: regulations, technology, geopolitics, and market conditions. But knowing what they are is only half the battle, right? The real question is, how do we assess their potential impact? And more importantly, how do we adapt?
You're spot on. And that's what we'll unpack next.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how to evaluate the potential impact of each of these factors on your specific project.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Because let's be real, just knowing a storm is coming isn't very helpful if you don't know how to batten down the hatches, right?
Right.
So how do we figure out which changes are the batten down the hatches kind and which ones are more like a light drizzle?
Well, that's where we move from identifying these external factors to actually assessing their potential impact
Okay.
on your specific project.
Right, right.
And there are some pretty handy tools for this.
Yeah, our guide mentions something called a change impact matrix. Now, I'll admit, the word matrix always makes me think of Keanu Reeves dodging bullets in slow motion.
Well, luckily for us, this type of matrix is a lot less dangerous.
Okay, good.
Think of it as a simple chart that helps you map out potential changes and their ripple effects.
Okay.
It helps you prioritize which changes need your attention first.
So instead of freaking out about every little blip on the radar, we can focus our energy on the things that could really rock the boat, right?
Exactly. And to do that, you can use a tool like a SWOT analysis.
Okay, a SWOT analysis.
You start by looking at your project's strengths. What are you really good at?
Right.
Then you move on to weaknesses, where are you vulnerable?
Okay. I'm seeing how this ties into those external factors. Like, if your project's strength is its reliance on a cutting-edge technology, but then a new technology emerges, external factor alert,
Right.
that could become a weakness pretty quickly, right?
You got it. And that's why the next two parts of the SWOT analysis are crucial. Opportunities are there ways to leverage these external changes to your advantage.
Right?
And threats. What are the potential negative impacts you need to be prepared for?
So it's all about having a clear picture of your project's playing field, then figuring out how those external factors might change the game,
Yes.
and finally coming up with a plan to either score some goals or at least, not get completely blown out of the water.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And remember, the impact of these external factors isn't always immediately obvious.
Right.
Something that seems minor at first could have a domino effect,
Oh, yeah.
impacting your timeline, your budget, even your relationships with stakeholders.
Can you give us a real-world example of how this might play out? Something relatable for our listeners, no matter what industry they're in.
Absolutely. Let's say you're leading a marketing campaign for a new product launch.
Okay.
Everything's humming along. You've got your social media strategy locked in. Your influencer partnerships are set.
Okay, I can practically hear the celebratory champagne popping already.
But then a competitor unexpectedly drops their price right before your launch date.
Uh-oh.
Suddenly, your carefully crafted pricing strategy needs a major overhaul.
Wow.
And if you hadn't factored in the possibility of a price or market conditions, remember,
Yeah.
you could be caught completely off guard.
That's a perfect example of how even something as simple as a price change can throw a wrench in the works.
Right.
So we've identified the external factors, we've assessed their potential impact using tools like SWOT analysis and the change impact matrix.
Right.
Now comes the really important part.
Yes.
What do we actually do about it? How do we adapt?
Well, the good news is that even in the face of uncertainty, there are proven strategies you can use to navigate these changes effectively.
Okay, good.
And our guide outlines 3 fundamental ways to adapt: adjusting project scope, shifting schedules or budgets, and embracing flexibility, especially when it comes to your project backlog.
Okay. Let's unpack these adaptation strategies.
Nice.
Starting with adjusting project scope.
Okay.
What does that look like in practice?
Think of it like this. You're building a bridge, right?
Okay.
But then there's an earthquake, and the landscape literally shifts.
Oh, no.
You can't just keep building the same bridge.
Right.
You need to reassess, redesign, maybe even relocate.
Okay.
The same goes for projects.
So it's about being willing to go back to the drawing board if needed, even if it means making some tough decisions about what features or deliverables to prioritize.
Precisely. Sometimes you need to scale back. Sometimes you need to pivot entirely. The key is to be agile and adaptable.
Okay. Adjusting project scope. Got it. What about those schedules and budgets? Because let's be real, those are often the first things to go haywire when unexpected changes pop up.
You're telling me. It
Yeah,
makes sense, right?
yeah.
Timelines and budgets are often interconnected.
Right.
So if a new regulation forces you to revamp a key process, it's almost inevitable that your schedule and budget will need some adjusting too.
It's like that old saying, time is money. But in this case, it's more like change is money. And also probably more time.
Exactly. And this is where having a solid understanding of your project's critical path comes in handy.
Yeah. Okay.
By identifying those tasks that absolutely must happen on schedule to avoid major delays.
Right.
You can make more informed decisions about where to allocate resources and how to potentially adjust less critical tasks.
So it's about prioritizing ruthlessly and being willing to make trade-offs when necessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the third adaptation strategy,
Okay.
which is all about embracing flexibility,
Right.
particularly within your project backlog. This is especially relevant for those of you working in agile environments.
Okay, backlog, flexibility, break that down for me. What does that look like in action?
Imagine this. You're developing a new software feature, and you've got a prioritized list of tasks in your backlog.
Okay.
But then a new technology emerges that completely changes the game.
Oh, wow.
Now, a less agile team might panic, trying to shoehorn this new tech into their existing plan.
Which, let's be honest, never ends well.
Yeah, right. But a team that embraces backlog flexibility can say, okay, this new tech is a game changer. Let's reevaluate our priorities, see how this fits into our overall vision, and adjust our backlog accordingly.
So it's about being willing to pivot to change direction when the situation demands it, rather than clinging to an outdated plan.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that in the world of projects, the only constant is change. And the teams that can adapt most effectively are the ones that thrive.
So we've talked about the four main external factors that can impact their projects. We've learned how to assess their potential impact, and we've got these awesome adaptation strategies in our back pocket. But how do we make sure we're staying ahead of the curve? It feels like a full-time job just trying to keep up with everything.
You're not wrong, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. The key is to build regular monitoring into your process. Think of it like checking the weather forecast. You wouldn't just check it once before a trip and then never look at it again, would you?
Especially not if I'm heading into a hurricane zone.
Exactly. So in the project world, that means setting up a system for regularly checking in with key stakeholders, scanning industry news and reports, even setting up Google Alerts for keywords related to your project.
So it's all about creating a bit of an early warning system, right? Like having those lookout towers to spot any potential storms brewing on the horizon.
Exactly. And the good news is that even small, consistent efforts can make a huge difference. Just taking 15 minutes each week to read an industry article or have a quick chat with a colleague about potential changes in their area can give you a valuable heads up.
Okay, I'm feeling much more equipped to navigate these shifting sands now. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I'd say this. The most successful projects aren't necessarily the ones that go off without a hitch, but the ones that can adapt and evolve when those inevitable hiccups pop up. So embrace the uncertainty, be prepared to adjust your sails, and never underestimate the power of a good plan and a little bit of flexibility.
Words to live by. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Until next time, happy navigating, everyone.